Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. I think this is the 6th HoW Talent Sessions, and really pleased that you can join me and Dave this morning. We are talking all about candidate experience, and very grateful to Dave from Creed Comms who's joining us this morning. Dave is really well known to us, as our Creed. In fact, we've been working with them for about 20 years now, collaborating on different client projects, be it career site, candidate experience, employer brand, you name it. What Dave doesn't know about candidate experience and employer brand probably isn't worth knowing. And more than that, I think it's a really important topic for us all right now. I think perhaps a lot of us have learned a lot about showing kindness, showing consideration during this really difficult time we've been going through. And now is the perfect time to consider how some of that consideration can be passed through into the experience we give to our candidates as they apply for our jobs. But more than that, and I think a lesson we can learn here is we often talk about candidates, and I'm no different in that, but we should think of candidates very much as people. And as we do navigate out of this, hopefully navigate out of this post-COVID world, and we think about hiring again, it's really critical, as we're going to be dealing with really high volumes of candidates, that everybody gets a really positive experience. So before I get started, I guess a little bit of housekeeping, please do ask questions. Dave's more than happy to field any questions you might have. There's an ask the questions box just down here, so click on that, post any questions you have, and we'll answer those at the end of this. So I'm going to find Dave now and invite him on screen, and we'll get started. So let's have a look, see if I can find him. Okay, there he is. Right, Dave, I'm inviting you on now. Okay, hopefully he will join us in just a second.
There we go.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
It worked. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Very kind. Well,
try to enjoy
Giles.
it.
Far
Yes.
too kind.
So apart from lots of experience in employer branding, Dave, you've also had experience of working for an ATS, a competitor, but I won't hold that against you.
Please don't. I like to block that part of my life out, Giles.
Well, thanks for joining us this morning. So today is all about candidate experience. And I guess there's a few areas that I want to cover off this morning. And the first really is talking about sort of getting back to basics. So should we start with that?
Sure.
So I guess going right back to basics, if we look at implementing like a really clear and consistent process, you know, what's your advice? What's your guidance around getting that bit right?
It just depends on where you're talking about starting this from, Giles, in terms of the process. I mean, we talk about employer brand covering four different stages. It's all the way from somebody considering you as a place to work or as a destination employer, all the way through to having them go through the application process, perform within the business, all the way through to referral and actually, you know, going and telling the people down that, you know, the friends and the family that you're a great place to work. And I think each element of that process, it's really important that the experience and the propositions that you're hearing from that employer are exactly the same. So where we try and help, I guess, and I suppose where this conversation will work quite nicely, Giles, with what Job Train do, is that what Creed, I suppose, for anyone who doesn't know Creed, I guess I'll start there. So Creed are an employer branding, talent attraction, and people comms agency. So we basically do the bits around what Job Train do. So I guess we're helping people realize, are you a place that they want to work or not? Then directing them to a careers website for them to go and apply. Then they do the great stuff with the likes of Job Train to actually go through the application process. Then there's the onboarding, and then there's actually getting them to perform within the business, and then there's hopefully getting them to refer talent and to live and breathe the values. And I guess the key thing is always about how are you making sure that the propositions and the reasons that people have joined in the first place are being lived and breathed throughout. And I think, Giles, if I understand right in terms of this conversation as well, it's about making sure that things within that application point and within the onboarding section very much match up with what you've gone out with in the first instance and the things and the promises that you've said initially.
Yeah, so we're talking consistency here, and I guess we're talking about making sure that it's personalized as well, both to the individual, but also it lives and breathes the employer brand or the values that you're looking to communicate out at the start of the process and have it consistent all the way through.
And I guess just as a non-theoretical thing for this would be, I can't see who's on the call today. I've got an idea of the types of organizations that will be, and the amount of organizations that I've worked with that will come to Creed or similar businesses to what we do and say, guys, we've got a load of contact center roles we need to fill in, or we've got a load of drivers that we need to fill in, or we need to completely redo just a very quick creative approach to what we're doing. We haven't got time or the budget to do a brand. Can we get some creative out there? They'll do a really nice creative that will work really well from an attraction standpoint, but then they could hit a careers website that feels completely different, and the usability and user experience isn't what you've promised or been saying in your attraction or how that looks and sounds. Then obviously they hit an applicant tracking system, so a job train equivalent. Then now this won't be the experience you get with job train, obviously. I've got to say that.
Thank you.
But generally speaking, again, is the experience that they've had from the attraction, the career site, then lived and breathed through the ATS. And that can be everything from tone of voice, that can be from how your creative looks, what the header image is at the top. Are you going out to market saying, we're really easy to work with, customer or candidate centric, whatever it might be. And then you've got a really complicated application process or application form or long-winded, whatever it may be. You're immediately people are going, this isn't what I thought this was going to be, or this isn't what I was just told, and now I've already been faced with this. So I think consistency is everything from what you're going out and saying, but also how you look and what your tone of voice is.
Yeah, agreed. I mentioned personalization before, just before on that. And I think critical to that, as you say, is the application form itself, or that first experience as you perhaps transition from a career site through to an ATS has got to be consistent. It's got to be relevant as well in terms of the types of information you're asking for. But also I think sometimes it's overlooked in terms of tone of voice. So you might have a fantastic job advert, and then if that falls off as soon as you get into the application process with perhaps quite abrupt language or a little bit too formal, that kind of thing, there's probably a great opportunity there to craft and tailor the tone of voice within the application form, and then following the email comms and that kind of thing will go out, whether it's an acknowledgement email or invites to interview, that they're consistent as well. I guess those are quite quick wins, aren't they? Really quick wins.
I think what I don't want to be on here saying is, you're gonna, if you go out with a new creative campaign, you're gonna need a new careers website and you're gonna need a new ATS. None of that's true. I mean, great if you can go out there with the new creative and message, etc. But you can create landing pages, you can create microsites, you can direct people to certain pages within applicant tracking systems that house the roles that you're specifically going out with, and just make sure everything's tied up. Just make sure that wherever you're sending people to, it's a relevant landing page. It's got all the information they could want to either decide whether they want to or not to apply for that position or within that department. And just like Giles says, it's personalization and it's consistency. There's nothing worse than having a really nice tailored personalized message that you see on, I don't know, a job board or on a programmatic advert somewhere, and then you land on a completely irrelevant page or a page that doesn't sound like you.
I think you make a really good point there, and something else that just sprung to mind is around making sure that you don't frustrate that candidate journey in terms of numbers of clicks. I'm sure that will make you smile in a minute when so many sites you go onto, and for somebody that's looking for careers, the first thing you have to do, or at least what we would do, is you end up scrolling right to the bottom of the site, try and dig around and find that careers link. And then you end up clicking 3, 4, 5 different times before you actually get through to the types of jobs that you want to apply for. And I guess those are quite quick wins in terms of just putting yourself through that initial, job search or job find process, from the engaging element of, rich media or, communications around employer brand, but being able to just get to the jobs quickly, apply for them quickly, not filling in information that's irrelevant as well. So
it's a debate that as well, Giles. It's a good debate, because the amount of times we get, should we have should career site be standalone, or should it be a page within our corporate website? And then, I'm going to open up the debate here, but who owns it? do resourcing, talent attraction, recruitment own it? Do marketing own it? Do the IT team own it? And then, so I know there's an awful lot of dancers that we see clients having to go through to determine who owns that. Yeah, you do tend to find that standalone career sites that link off the main site tend to work the best, but that's not always the way it can be done internally. But so I think your best case scenario is if you can have a standalone career site, great. If you can't, then a really well thought out section within your main corporate site would be your next best option.
I'm going to go off piece a little bit now. So not everybody will necessarily have a partner like Creed to work with in terms of making sure everything's right. And there's quite a lot of debate or conversation online now about, recruiters now need to be marketers. But also sometimes there's a bit of a challenge around, well, do we engage marketing? At what point? To what extent? How do we form a positive partnership with them, or even educate them that perhaps hiring people needs a slightly different marketing approach to selling products and services? What comments or tips have you got in terms of engaging, with marketing positively to get the best results and making sure they're on board as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see the right smile. Because for us, it can be, I'm going to be completely honest, because fundamentally we're a marketing agency, we just market jobs. And marketing can either be your biggest ally, like as in, I've got some examples of marketing where they've been absolutely, I'll go through those examples. And I've got instances where they're not, whose names I will not give. So a great example of a business that where we work really closely with marketing is Iceland, so the food retailer. So we helped them with their employer brand last year and their careers website. And right from the get-go, one big thing that we always say on kickoff meetings with any client before any work gets started is, who would you like involved in this piece of work that are going to be either advocates and can help us along the way with kind of material. So that could be just your brand guidelines or photography or videography, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And some guidance around how to use the brand versus who could also be your blockers. So who are going to be the people that, let's say we get really far down the track here and we get to the point where we're ready to launch, and then marketing, for example, would look at it and go, well, I've not been involved in this. That's not our brand. You've used the wrong colors. That's not our font. That's not our tone of voice. We're doing this in the... And immediately you could have spent an awful lot of money and time and effort and got behind something that gets pulled. Now, luckily with Iceland, we got their marketing team, brand team involved right from the beginning, and at every stage posting meeting and everything we now do for them, marketing are involved. So a good example at the minute is post brand, post careers website. We're talking to them at the minute about, you're doing a load of good stuff, guys, in the market at the moment. So you've got, you were the first supermarket to allow the vulnerable hour, as it were, and the elderly hour in early days. Well publicized. You had some really cool stuff where there's been, I think, 2 couples now proposing to one another in Iceland because they were supposed to be doing it in Iceland, the country. And there's all these it's really good.
Love it.
So there's all these really good things that they're doing, and we're kind of saying, you've not got a video on your career site yet. That was the next piece of work we were going to be working on you with. Why not? Let's just get some user generated content, guys, to put a really nice quick snippet video together on the careers page, not as a come work for us, no real call to action of anything. There's no kind of, we're not trying to sell products. We're not trying to sell jobs. This is just this is us. We've got our employer brand motif of Be Iceland, which stands for a load of stuff that's all over the site. And we just want a video that just shows how during COVID we have been Iceland. What have we done to live and breathe our propositions and our people deal? And that's a conversation with marketing. That's just been a really nice conversation to say, we're thinking this, guys. You don't need to do it with us. You can do it yourselves. We can help. We don't need to help, but we've just had this idea and we think this could work really well for yourselves. And marketing of just, with anything like that, with marketing and internal comms, if you get them on side, they are your biggest allies and biggest advocates, especially if they believe in what you're saying. And I think, Giles, is related but off-piste. I think we've historically talked about 3 brands. So you've got your corporate brand, and you've got your consumer brand, and you've got your employer brand, and they all join kind of in the middle. Sometimes your values might sit right in the middle, and you've got these 3 interlocking circles.
It's like a Venn diagram type thing.
Just like that. Yeah. You've seen the slides too many times, that's why.
Yeah.
And
learn from the best.
Yeah, exactly. And they all need to talk to each other. They all need to be sympathetic to one another. And I would strongly disagree with anyone in a marketing department who said employer brand, there's no such thing. Our brand's our brand, because I think the way any business would talk to its customers or its partners is very different to how it would treat its employees. That they should be different, albeit linked. But I think I've been listening to a couple of these webinars myself recently, and I think, Giles, I maybe mentioned this to you. There was some really interesting conversations recently about how your actual brand, so your consumer brand, has never been closer to your employer brand, i.e. your employer brand is pretty much leading what people and the perception of your core brand is in the market at the moment. And I know this is a slight off-piste, but I think it's really important there how employer brand at the minute is driving perception of corporate brand and consumer brand, and we can talk a little bit more about that.
It's a neat little segue.
You could get me talking all day about that, but just going back, marketing really important to have on board. They will help determine, can you have your own career site? Do you need to work within their guidelines? What if you're going to do any creative, if you're going to develop your employer brand, if you are going to market anything that relates to jobs or careers, what you can and can't do. And they're definitely worth engaging with and trying to get on side, because it will save you a lot of headaches later on.
Cool. I realized this should have easily been a 45-minute session, because I've got one more question for you. So you mentioned and you touched on employee or sort of self-generated content, if you like. So that might be videos or images, anything that tells, I hate to use the word, but authentic story. People quite often have a little bit of nervousness about taking the plunge with those. And I know, for example, within our world at Job Train, you can include videos and images within your job adverts. And for me, I think that ones that have been self-generated often, convey the most in terms of, stories and what have you. But people are quite nervous about it. And you mentioned obviously getting in touch with marketing. What's the best way to sell that proposal or proposition to marketing and get them on board with it?
So that was we luckily got a good relationship. And this, by the way, I'll not name drop. I'll be good. There's 3 other clients that we're having exactly the same conversation with at the moment about user-generated video, to have video created during COVID, which seems like a crazy thing given social distancing measures. But we are looking at creative ways of creating these videos. It's not in a cliched, and I apologize for anybody who's on this call because I can't see who, but in the way that the banks are on TV at the moment with all the quick snippets of people's faces working from home. And we're here to, it's less about that because I think that's been done now, but it's coming up with some nice ideas. And I think it's about how you guide the employees, Giles. So we've created these guidance sheets, which basically say what we'd like your employees to do. And it's all branded up in Iceland's brand. I'll use Iceland as an example, and it will say, right, first of all, we want to ask people questions around how they've been Iceland. So there's these 5 different questions, and it will say, can you explain how you have rolled your sleeves up during lockdown measures or whatever it might be? And then there's directions just at the bottom there that say your video should be taken horizontally. It should be no longer than 30 seconds. Make sure that it's lit well, etc., etc. There's all these kind of video with kind of the guidance we've got from the video guys. And that's just a one-sheeter that's gone out to the like the regional managers across each of the different areas. And they've kind of gone away and just had picked or gone out and said, they've got these things called talking shop reps, which are like their local, like the reps for each of the different stores, and said, look, if you want to be part of a video, guys, we're working on a video that's going to be maybe going on some advertising, but it's definitely going on the career site. Anyone who wants to take part, more than welcome. Please submit your video to this Dropbox link when it's done. So it's basically giving people nice guidance, just saying to marketing, you guys take the first sift, we'll take whatever you're happy with after that and kind of mash it together.
Great. So in other words, you're not constraining people, but you're giving them a framework within which to operate, and some clear tips, and then hopefully on from that, confidence to just go and do it for themselves and give it a go. And how do you then measure that, both in terms of the success of that content, whether it resonates, and sort of even in terms of sort of the candidate experience itself? Would you do that based on things like, quick NPS surveys, or how do you measure whether that candidate experience is working well and it's consistent? And I'll add into that, the experience of being interviewed by, a recruiting manager and that kind of thing. How have you seen people do it well?
It's a good question, and it's two-pronged answer. So I guess if I take Iceland, for example, and another one we're really close to completing is with Vodafone as well. And they aren't looking at this from a measuring perspective. Like I say, this is an unusual approach. So I'll talk about what we normally do. But in this instance, this isn't about, I want to see a return on investment. This isn't I want a video that's going to directly do something. This is I want to reinforce our employer brand to make sure that what we have gone out to market to say we are. So we're saying we are Iceland because we do these 6-7 different things. This video is to enforce that. It's to say, don't just take our word for it. Don't take the nice words that a copywriter has written on the website. This is actually what we've done during this time. Don't believe us. Listen to our people. These are authentic videos from our people. Sorry to use the authentic word, but again, it is true. Same for Vodafone. What we would normally do on a video, though, that would sit on a homepage, or might be used on LinkedIn, or might be used on programmatic advertising, or whatever it might be, we've got different measures in place to see how long people have watched those videos. At what point did they jump out? Did it increase dwell time on the website? Has it has it tuned up the number of applications? Has it increased the quality of applications? And you can run those measurements from the time it was implemented to the time it was taken down, etc. But I think video as a medium is very much about reinforcing something. Less about necessarily strict measurement, just by virtues of the tech available to measure what video actually does. But I think going back to your post, point, Giles, just quickly, was job postings allegedly on job boards with videos on them have a 35% higher application rate and allegedly a higher quality of application as well. Because I believe a lot of people, so that's from Total Jobs and Read. So that's getting the impression there that people are seeing an advert that they like in the search listings, clicking on it, but then before actually just hitting apply or just skim reading it. And we know all the stuff about men skim reading and going, yeah, I can do all of that and whatever. I think there's actually a bit of a, let's watch the video and actually see, is this the right place for me? Has it got the right values for me? And
hopefully you've got an element of self-filtering in that process as well. It's either going to strike a chord with you, or it's going to put you off in some way, which is actually quite positive, self-selection. I think it's probably worth making the point around measurement as well. I'm talking from an ATS perspective here and working with an employer brand partner like yourselves, make sure that your reporting is joined up. So no doubt on your career sites and what have you, you're investing a lot of time in terms of applying Google Analytics from adverts or tracking, different types of tracking through from adverts through to career sites, through to conversion and right the way through. Your ATS should be able to work with your either your marketing team or with your employer brand specialist to make sure that reporting and that tracking is joined up right the way through. Absolutely.
So got some brilliant cases of where that's been the case, and some cases where it can be frustrating and you don't get the code where you need to. Basically, we've got this isn't a creed sell, it's just a fact from our point of view. We've got a brilliant digital team who know stuff. They talk in, it's riddles. I don't know what they're talking about half the time, but it's all Google Tag Manager. There's Floodlight Tag. There's all these different types
UTMs.
It all makes sense when they explain it, but probably when I explain it, it won't. But fundamentally, you put a piece of code on your advert, you put a bit of code on your careers website, and you put a bit of code on your thank you for applying within Job Train, for example. And that will categorically tell you where your application came from, not just to the media, but the exact banner and what that banner had on it. So you know exactly what's resonating the most with candidates. And any kind of and businesses like Creed and our competitors and stuff, and any agency like that worth their salt, they'll have dashboards and the means of being able to pull that into something so you can see in real time, where exactly you're getting your application from. And you can then be really quite agile in terms of where are you spending your money? Because more and more we know that advertising is moving to more of a pay-per-performance approach. We're seeing a decline in the big 12-month annual job board contracts and that kind of stuff. And honestly, Giles, I'm not going to go down.
Conversation for another day, but one we should probably delve into for sure.
It's another day. But so the tracking element is ever important, and making sure that you've got, you're having the right conversations with your agencies or your own internal marketing teams and IT teams, and then with your ATS, because the implementation of the code is simply copy and paste. It's just making sure you're dealing with the right person.
Yep, thank you for saying that. And don't be getting charged by your ATS for implementing code. It's not a complicated process. So, we at Job Train do it for free, and it's not complex at all. Conscious of time, we might run over a little bit. I hope that's all right with everybody. So as we are all thinking about or getting prepared for maybe getting back into the office, I know it's something that we are now thinking about and we have been planning for a number of weeks. What can people be doing right now or considering before we do start hiring again in terms of candidate experience?
Yeah, this is something that I'd thought quite a little bit about, actually. And I was talking to a colleague yesterday, actually, and they said, do you think when all this is over, that when people are being interviewed for jobs, that one of the questions that a candidate might ask is, how did you treat people, or what did you do for people during COVID? And I think that was...
what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, because I thought, amazing, I think, what different businesses will say during this, because you've heard some amazing stories of things that people have been doing during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then some equally, fairly not shocking, but just less than ideal ways that certain employers have been treating their staff. And I think a lot of the stuff I've been reading and hearing, I guess, is about how a lot of organizations have got the Zoom and the team set up, and they're getting people to have the Zoom parties, and they're doing quizzes, and they're doing all this good stuff. And I think that's really important. And you probably, most of the people on this call will have experienced something like that. I think what a couple of surveys that I've been reading have found recently is that not all employees like being in these situations, in front of a camera with the camera in your face talking. I mean, well, there's not many people probably who do, even amongst friends and peers. And not everybody wants to take part in quizzes or have these Zoom parties. And there's an awful lot of people who just want a bit of one-on-one time. They just want to kind of just check in, make sure that they're okay. And there's just making sure you've got some internal sentiment surveys going out. How's everybody feeling? How's everybody think? Because we've been working on something basically where we think that employers need to be kind of going out to their employees with a couple of messages around appreciation. If employees have been doing things that are above and beyond, are you informing people of what's going on within the business and what kind of measures you're going to be putting in place that leads to around protection? So when they go back, are you going to be having screens up? Are you going to be having cleaners going in there extra? Are you going to be having reduced number of staff? Are you doing it in waves? Are you going to still enable working from home?
Yeah.
And then there's prepared as well, this kind of preparation. So what are they doing to be ready for when the world changes, and what will the new world look like in terms of working from home now? And we know Google and Facebook, for example, are saying, don't bother coming back into the office for the rest of the year. And every business is going to be making slightly different decisions there, which adds nervousness. So I think for me, it's talk to your people, do the big group things for the people who like the group things, and to keep, the masses happy, but make sure you're talking to individuals. And I know from my own experience yesterday, we've unfortunately got a couple of guys on furlough. Gave all those had a good hour chat with everybody yesterday, mate, just checking in. Are you okay? Do you need anything from me? You're still welcome to join our calls in the morning and stuff. You don't have to, but if you want to, stay in touch. And I think it's just making sure everybody's okay, because everybody's circumstances are different. People might be cooped up, have their own stresses and strains at home. So I think that's important.
I think it's also fair to say that don't necessarily assume some of the great things that a lot of employers are doing, it doesn't mean that everybody else is doing it. And I think for a lot of us, both our employer brand and our EVP, if you like, the deal we have with people that come to work with us will have shifted. The most obvious examples of that might be in terms of how and where we work, both in terms of, changes in, when we might turn up to work, when we might leave, some flexibility around there, or, new changes or evolving changes around working from home, and how that's probably more accepted now. It's understood that people are actually productive from home. Heaven knows the whole country's been productive from home. So that actually forms part of that experience, and that's something you should be communicating out, which leads quite neatly into the last little bit. I know we've got 1 minute left, but I think we'll go over a little bit if that's okay with everybody, is around referrals. So how do we capture referrals? How do we better communicate our workplace stories to engage, inform, excite people about the prospect of working for us?
I think referrals really tricky at the minute, Giles, because I think with so many businesses not recruiting or on recruitment freezes, etc., that referrals, it's a tricky time. So I think it's more about preparation than it is necessarily about hitting it too hard now. Maybe depends on the kind of business. I think if I just quickly, because I'm conscious of time, reflect on Creed, we've got logistics companies like Hermes who are super, like never been busier, like literally never been busier. And care organizations whose care doesn't slow down, and they're just, it's all bonkers there. So there are like kind of sectors there in care and logistics that may very well benefit from referral because their requirement of numbers is incredibly high. But you've got an awful lot of competition in those sectors because that, you know, let's say if I take Hermes, for example, I'm sure DPD, I'm sure Yodel, I'm sure TNT, all these guys are equally going out to market with an improved kind of proposition. So I think look at the sector that you're in first and where you're at. I think if you are a business that is desperate for people right now, then I think it's probably either quickly develop the referral program that you've got and fine tune it and just make sure that there's an awareness of it by your current employees, especially if you're bringing in lots of new people. I think if you're an employer who is maybe on a freeze at the moment or recruitment isn't a priority and it's about getting your ducks in a row for when post-COVID and making sure you're in the strongest position possible, which is where 70% of our clients are at the moment, which is we want to come out of COVID, hit the ground running and be employer of choice. We want to stand out when we're back. Yeah. And I think that's when you need to be thinking now about, well, what do our employees want in a referral program? It's going back to what do our audience want? What's important for them? Is it big rewards, micro rewards? Is it they want to do it on an app? They want to do it on a website? They want to do it on the phone? Ask all these things.
Yeah. And let's be clear here. We're not talking about, who do you know that would be great for our company? This is far more about encouraging your employees, almost like crowdsourcing your employees to tell your story. Exactly. So through these like self-generated videos, anything that tells a story about what it's like to work at an organization, it's harnessing people to have the confidence to share some of that content themselves.
It is. It's not everybody again will want to, but asking people to write blogs talking about their experiences working from home or how your organizations treated them during the lockdown and giving them flexibility that they might not otherwise have had. So it's basically leveraging the good sentiment that's likely already there and just making sure it gets spoken about, because I know, and maybe even on this call, we've got clients who are doing some really, really good stuff at the moment. They are helping, like in the Nightingale hospitals, getting them set up and all this great stuff. And do the public know? I'm not sure. There's some of them. I'll name drop one that isn't on this call, I don't think, but G4S. They have been manning the security for all these pop-up hospitals, as it were. I've not seen that anywhere except for some of our contacts on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn obviously isn't a place where they're going to be looking for the security guys and girls. So I think this is about are you marketing and telling the story in the right place? And I think that's what you need to be doing and finding out, getting that content from your candidates and then finding somebody who can help project it.
And there's no better way of getting your story or your message into the right place than by asking your employees or giving them the confidence to share stuff around their own networks, because ultimately that's where those people will sit, live, and consume content and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
But gutted this though. It's been really, really helpful. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been great.
Welcome.
And what I'd say is, can't see any questions right now unless anybody's got it to ask. But if you do have any follow-up questions at all, then Dave, what's your email address? I can reach you directly.
It's nice and easy. It's dave@creedcoms.co.uk, and I'll put it in the chat thing as well.
Brilliant. And I think everybody's got mine, but it's just giles@jobtrain.co.uk. We will be sending out both a recording of this session and also a follow-up, just a quick post on this as well. Next week, we are all about reporting. I've yet to announce exactly who's going to be joining us, but what I can say is going to be a reporting expert from Cielo, well-known RPO. What RPOs don't know about reporting and analytics probably isn't worth knowing, so really pleased to be joined by them. We'll send out a message shortly about that session for next week. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope you have a great week. I hope you enjoy some sun, and thank you, Dave, very much.
Welcome. Thanks,
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks for
Thank
joining.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.